Moving on to topic number 8 in the defensive draft. And hey, rich draft, we said, a really rich top 15, but it's offensive heavy. And hey, I'm an offensive minded guy, so I love it. But hey, there are going to be some defensive guys. You need some defensive studs to stop these offensive guys who are possibly going to be one of the first defensive studs to go off the board.
Yeah, I think we just mentioned him. I think Patrick Surtain could be the first guy off the board on the defensive side. First of all, corners are so important in the NFL. We mentioned how a shutdown corner or a number one corner can really change your defense. Surtain's big. He's, I think, 6'2", 210. His dad was a really good corner in the NFL. Very technically sound as a corner. Can play press man, but can also play zone. Very fundamentally sound corner. As we mentioned, he's already got the NFL pedigree with his dad. Played at Alabama, so he's played in the SEC. He's played for a great defensive coach in Nick Saban. So the only, I think, worry you have in taking Surtain early is that there's been some defensive backs for Alabama that just kind of haven't worked out. I mean, I know Dre Kirkpatrick, has been better as of late, but they've had some other guys some corners especially, that just haven't totally panned out as, top 20 picks or so. But this kid looks like he is the number one corner. And he is the guy I would take if I'm looking for a defensive player. If I have an early pick and he's still on the board, that's the guy I'm taking, Patrick Surtain. I don't care if I have other good corners. I'm taking Surtain because I think he can change a defense for any NFL team.
Yeah, earlier in the show, we talked about how obviously Curry changed the game of basketball. Well, the game of football has changed over the last decade. Instead of really being run heavy, and you can maybe even say over the last 2 decades, instead of being run heavy, it's turned into a passing league. So, and not only have we seen the wide receiver position be more valuable, but the cornerback position has become more valuable, along with the receiving running back becoming more valuable. So it's just really one of those things where a pass-heavy league needs some defenders to come out, and I think Patrick Surtain is that guy. I think he is going to be the number one defender off the board, being the best cornerback available in the draft. And like we said, we talked earlier about a guy that can play multiple positions in the NFL. Not only do I believe that he could line up outside and play your number one receiver outside, but I think he could play the slot and be a slot cornerback as well, which is huge in the NFL. Or he could play safety. Like I said, if the Patriots wanted to go after this kid and use him in multiple positions, maybe have Gilmore on one side, maybe have Surtain on the other, or maybe, like I said, move on from the McCourty twins, because we really haven't seen too much production out of those two over the last year. So it's like one of those things where you could easily see Surtain playing safety because he's that talented as well. But J.C. Horn is another guy. If maybe they just say, hey, we like Horn better, and maybe their intangibles are really close, and maybe like Horn just got a better interview right now, I could see J.C. Horn becoming the first defender off the board, the cornerback out of South Carolina, another guy that is multidimensional, that could play inside, outside, or you could see him playing safety in the NFL. And a lot of times that happens. If you have a cornerback that maybe doesn't pan out in the NFL, at like outside or inside, you would bring him to safety. That way he's not playing a wide receiver directly. He can play the zone a little bit more, or he can play a little bit more zone ranger and play the ball and go and use his ball skills to go and make plays. Or maybe he's a great tackler. He can come down into the box now and tackle. So I think it's one of those things where you're starting to see multi-dimensional corners be able to go all around the field, and that's because you got wide receivers and running backs going all over the field as well. So it's just the game is developing, and you're seeing players develop along with the game. But I think those are the first 2 defenders that you could see that could come off the draft board this year and next week, to be honest.
Yeah, no question. I think you're absolutely right about the 2 defensive backs. The other thing is, too, is there's not a complete stud at either defensive tackle or defensive end. I mean, Christian Barrymore is a really good player. People are talking about Kwity Paye out of Michigan as defensive end, the Phillips kid from Miami. All those guys still have some things that don't make them like those true blue chip guys that could be top 10 picks on the defensive side of the ball. I think the two corners do have that. I think that's why you're going to see the corners go off the board first before those other guys. But moving on to our next topic, and this is still with the NFL draft. And we're going to talk about the draft a lot today. We're going to talk a lot more about the draft next week, because next Wednesday, our next show is the night before the first round of the draft. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then we're not going to see you, our audience, until the draft is completely done the following week. So a lot of draft talk. We both love football. We're going to keep talking about it.